And now it's time for Guerilla Roundup. They'll let you know what happened overnight when things transpire you whilst you sleep. Right there in the loop you keep.
Well, today we are joined by the other of the twin towers of guerrilla cricket. Having had Hendo on yesterday, today we have the man who gets us on air, the Bear. Welcome, Bear.
At last, I have made it on to messages after match report.
It's great to have you here. So, to start with, what I'd ask you to do, if you can, is to summarise the day's play in about 90 seconds, if that's possible.
Well, it was a day that could have gone two ways, wasn't it? I mean, we came in here. I thought it was. I thought it was going to be as cloudy as it was when I left home when the game started, but it just started to filter out. You thought if it was a bit cloudier, England might have got a bit more out of the pitch, but the pitch was quite dead, and Ireland just had to get themselves in the morning, and you kind of felt that this could go a little bit longer. You still didn't expect it to much go, maybe mid-afternoon session. Get some good tech to look good this morning, as did Tucker. And it looked quite hard to shift. And then when they went, you kind of thought, oh, that's it, we're through. This is going to be over quite quickly. And then again, Adair and what's his name? Camper. No, it wasn't Camper.
No, it was McBride.
Yes, God. See, I've had a couple of beers and a couple of spliffs today. It's memory's a bit hazy. They came together and had 100. What was the partnership? 160 odd, I think. I can't remember exactly.
They took it from 162 to 325, so that's 163.
Yeah, it was a cracking partnership. Adair was smashing all over the place, but Brian looked organised and was just keeping company with him for a while. England. We talked about this towards the end of the play with Dave Sarrar. I mean, they were very much swapping tactics. It seemed every other ball, which got a bit frustrating in the end. I can kind of see why. There was no jeopardy in the game, so they kind of felt that they could probably have the right to do it. They had two new bowlers. They were trying. Well, not Potts isn't new, but certainly Tongue was. They were trying to try things out. The ball was really old, and the wicket was unresponsive. So I guess it was fair game. But from an England supporter's point, it looked a bit disorganised. And Adair was fun, and he took advantage of it, and so did Brian. And eventually, when Adair just feathered one through the keeper, trying to uppercut to get into the 90s, which was a bit of a shame. Again, you thought it would go quite quickly, but again, McBride stayed there, fee on hand, stuck there for 34 balls, and Hume was out there for 20, 30 balls as well, and they managed to get themselves into a lead and made England bat. And then all of a sudden it was over 4 balls later because Adair bowled a pile of shit, got hit for 3-4 out of 4 in the first 4 balls, and that was the game done. But I think you have to say hats off to Ireland. They could have quite easily caved this morning, gone the other way, and it had all been over before lunch. But they showed some pride, yes. And they made England bat again. So I think hats off to Ireland.
Yeah, it would have been odds on for an innings win this morning, that's for sure.
Certainly, absolutely. Oh, that's a day. It wasn't quite 90 seconds, but It
wasn't quite, so about 3 minutes, but not bad. Thanks, Bear. So just going back a bit, as you said, McBride and Adair batted really well. It's true to say, I think, that at the stage where they were lost 2 wickets on 162, they lost Tector and Camphor 162, and there was a general view that it'd be over, probably by lunchtime. Where did England let go, do you think?
I think that they the short ball tactic. This is what I mean. They kind of, at that point, they thought they were going to get. They kind of got frustrated. They didn't get through again very quickly. But it was quite apparent the ball was doing very little off the wicket, and it was quite a slow wicket. It was quite easy for the batsman to get in. The ball was obviously going soft by this point. It's 55, 60 overs old, so you're not going to get anything out of it. So I think they felt it was legitimate to go to the short ball stuff. But the problem is, if you don't hit the deck hard enough, it's only getting up at waist height. And for batsmen of this caliber who plays all sorts of T20, that's just a hit me ball. And once you get your eye in, and they're still doing it, I think Adair and McBrien had fun. Leach was off for long stretches as well. They didn't bowl particularly well today, but again, the wicket wasn't very helpful to him either. And Root tried a little bit, but often I thought they were bowling. Root was bowling around the wickets to Adair when he was hitting him out of the park. There wasn't a lot of spin, and I thought, well, that's a really bad angle for that, because it's never going to get him out of LBW. So if you bowl it even fractionally short, and Root bowls with quite a flat arm, so he just can sit back all the time and smash him into the leg side, which is what he was doing. Well, he only scored one run on the offside, didn't he, in that first 50 or something? He was on 49 out and hadn't scored any runs on it.
That's right. And Root went for 59 runs from 10 overs, which it wasn't sort of wild hitting most of the time. It was
no. I mean, it was. He picked his shots exactly. There was a lot of sweeps and a lot of clouts, and there was no one out at Cow, for example. Which is an obvious place to have someone.
So overall, I think it's fair to say the England bowling was pretty ordinary. The lines weren't consistent. There was the occasional good ball, but there was a lot of width offered by the quick bowlers that really wasn't very impressive. But in all of that, Josh Tongue managed to take 5 for 66. What's your view of him in terms of a prospect for England?
He doesn't look too bad. I quite like him, but Stokes seemed quite obsessed with using him for the short ball tactic.
Yeah.
And I genuinely, and we talked about this a lot during the test, I genuinely think that was I want to see how he does at this in case we need someone to bang it in short in the Ashes type thing. But again, I think, and they are going to play a test at Lords, and it's testing out what a wicket is like at Lords as well, and it's quite dead. I don't think it's particularly responsive to that, unless you're going to be sort of Mark Wood, Jofra Archer pace. You might probably get something out of it. Ollie Stone's injured, so is he going to be used for that? That's one option they're looking at him for. But I would like to have seen what he was like given longer spells to actually have a few slips in with a newish ball, and see how he get. I mean, because that's how he got his first 2 wickets.
Yes,
when he started the spell yesterday, they were both up there. One was behind, one was LBW, wasn't it? And then he did bowl a short one that got Paul Sterling trying to play it off his around chest area and gloved it through to the keeper. So, I'd like to see more of that, maybe, and less of the short stuff.
Yeah.
I thought he did all right, actually.
I think he did reasonably well in the circumstances. I'd have to say from a neutral perspective, but also from the perspective of an Australian looking at England as a prospect of a series coming up, I took some heart from the appearance of England being pretty lackluster right through the afternoon session. There wasn't any sense of purpose that came through, and I've seen that happen before. It happened in New Zealand once or twice, and I know most teams go through that from time to time, but the frustration of Stokes in terms of changing things around, I think, is sometimes counterproductive in that nobody really sort of works on keeping to a plan and going with it until it succeeds. That to me expresses itself in so many changes that there's no capacity for them to tie down a batsman and to work out a plan how to get someone out. Rather, you give them a few balls, as you said, and then move on to something else.
Yeah. Well, the one time you're thinking about in New Zealand was when we made them follow on. And maybe that was a bad decision because you've got an old bowling attack. But I think in general, he's not going to have that bowling attack again. And the wiser heads and the better bowling heads of the likes of Anderson, Broad, and Ollie Robinson, he'll take more advice from and will be swayed against necessarily doing so much so soon. Jimmy will go, look, give me 4 overs. And I'm going to do this. And he would take that from Jimmy, whereas I don't think he'd take that from Potts or tongue on a debut, would he? He'd tell them, "I think you should do this," and they're not likely to stand up and go, "No, Skip, I want to do this,"
Yeah,
because they're newer to the side. So it's a different dynamic when you go in with your full-on experienced attack.
yeah,
But yeah, and you're right. Any team can drift. I mean, even Australia can drift.
yeah,
If batsmen get on top, it does sometimes. It looks like bloody hard work,
yeah.
being in the field. And there are some good batsmen on either side in this series. So there will be times when both sides will be sitting in and be made to look quite average in the field, I'd imagine.
So,
Um,
so
yeah,
it also raised the question for me of England's bowling attack in the event that they're facing a deep innings, and even though Ireland made 362, they only batted for 86 overs, so it wasn't a particularly long innings. But if they're facing an innings of 120, 130 overs, can they afford to go into a Test match if Stokes isn't fit enough to bowl with him?
ideally you don't want to, but I don't think the England side they will go that way. See, in the old days, what they would have done, they'd have dropped Leach.
Yes.
Yeah, and they'd have said, we don't need a spinner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we'd have gone with the 7 batsmen, and which one have been Stokes as a possible bowler. And then we'd have gone with 4 pacemen. And we wouldn't have had an option, and Root would have been the spinner, possibly. But I think that Stokes likes having his spinner, and he likes having a professional spinner, not a part-timer. I think he trusts Root to bowl, but I think the other thing is Root, if he does want to bowl, he's a right arm spinner, and Leach is a left armer, so he has that option there as well. And Root's turned into quite, he's a half decent offie.
Yeah.
I mean, he's nothing spectacular, but he'll pick you up the odd wicket. And Leach, has managed to get first innings wickets where, a lot of people say, oh, you won't get first innings wickets, blah, blah, he needs the wicket to spin. But if you give a spinner his head and enough overs, he's not the most economical, I'll give you that, but he does. But and in the positive column, he gets wickets by people being aggressive against him. Today,
Yes.
he gets a couple of LBWs, people trying to sweep him, being aggressive because he's accurate enough. And then he got one where Camphor swept and got it wrong and swept onto his stump. So he's bowling the right balls to get the wickets if the batsmen make mistakes. And if batsmen want to be aggressive, occasionally they will make mistakes. So when things are slow, you might just, I'm sure Lyon's done it loads of times in first innings when the wickets shouldn't be going to the spinners. The spinner comes on, and the side who may have been scoring reasonably slowly think, here's the person to attack, get him out of the attack. And if he holds his head and the captain believes in him, he might well pick up 1 or 2 wickets that are important in the whole scheme of things. So,
Indeed.
To answer your question, I think also Stokes, I think will bowl in the Ashes. I think he'll only bowl if he feels he really needs to. And being Stokes and Superman, he'll have a spell where England are pretty much under the pump, and he'll finally go, right, that's it, I've got to bowl right at the tail end of the first innings or halfway through the second innings, and it's getting tight. And he'll get that, and if he gets a wicket, he gets really pumped up. He doesn't feel the pain then. And apparently he does wear a knee brace when he's going to bowl. So whatever's going on with it, it's manageable. He just doesn't. I don't think he wants to do it unless he has to. But I think he's prepared to if he has to.
Now, as far as Ireland are concerned, this is their last Test match that's scheduled. Nobody quite knows when their next Test match is going to be. But you've got to say there's some signs of hope for Ireland. Their bowling attack was a little disappointing, I think it's fair to say. But their middle order is certainly showing some signs of strength there. And it was very unfortunate what happened to McCollum injuring himself. Balbirnie just doesn't make any runs when we're watching him.
Yes.
but we do know that he has the capacity to score well. And Tector looked quite good before he got out as well today.
Yeah, their middle order looks pretty solid.
Yeah. So it's a long journey for a new Test team setting out, and unfortunately they're not getting that many opportunities. But you'd have to say that they acquitted themselves pretty respectably overall.
Yeah, and you got to win a Test match. You've got to take 20 wickets, and it's bowling attacks actually that probably experience in different conditions and having an extra bit of pace, playing against better players. I mean, their bowling attack looked pretty weak, to be fair, without Josh Little. I thought Adair would be better. McBride acquitted himself all right as a spinner, but he's not, I mean, this is it. It's kind of like it almost feels like a good county bowling attack. It has no real strength when you get to the top level.
Yes.
And somehow they've got to find those sorts of people, because if they, they have got a batting unit that looks like it can hold itself together and score scores. And if that's the case, you've got to have the bowlers to back you up to take the wickets that allow you to be in positions to win Test matches. And unfortunately, I just don't see that in Ireland at the moment. With experience and games, and giving new blood games and having some sort of structure in Ireland, then you can find these players, and eventually you will get there.
Yep. So we end up with a match where England won comfortably by 10 wickets, and we move on Wednesday to the World Test Championship final at 10:30 at the Oval, where we will be covering it. But before doing that, we've got our tweeter of the day and our Guerilla of the day, and they're very closely connected today, because our Guerilla of the day is our friend from Philadelphia, Brian Barish, who calls a spade a spade. It occurred in the morning session when Jack Leach went off for a while, and there was a lot of speculation about what it was. Jay Grover thought he had irritable bowel syndrome. He's actually got Crohn's disease, and somebody said, well, maybe he's just going to take a toilet break. And Brian just came on commentary that and said, yeah, he's gone for a poop. Which I thought was, a very guerrilla way of putting it.
Absolutely.
So he's our Guerilla of the day. And in response to that, Dave Wood tweeted this to make himself the tweeter of the day. He said, you just don't get people insinuating that a player has popped off to curl one eyed on other commentary, which I thought was spot on.
You don't. And that's what you love about us, isn't it?
Yeah.
We don't look back.
So thank you, Dave and Brian, for taking those nominations. Thank you all for being with us. Please like and share this video if you do like it. And by all means, comment below or tweet us at Guerilla Cricket. And if you would like to support us, please go to patreon.com/Guerilla Cricket. There are a number of levels at which you can support us, and in return, all our patrons get a number of benefits, which we've spoken about at length previously, but we do need support, and we would love whatever we can get. So thank
Absolutely.
you. You got anything to add before we go, Bear?
Yeah, just show us the money, man. Come on. Patreon.com. Guerilla Cricket. Show us some cash. We need your support. That's what keeps us going, Messi,
Absolutely. So thank you all for being with us, and we'll be back on Wednesday. And that's it for the Guerilla Roundup today. Thanks, Bear.
Thank you very much. See you Wednesday. Bye.
And now it's time for Guerilla Roundup. They'll let you know what happened overnight.